Hello and welcome to Cornish Walking Trails. It's raining! Plan B.
Listening to the same thing then.
Hello everybody, it's raining.
Hello, it is, isn't it? Cornishing.
Yeah.
We are getting wet.
Yeah. Should we go in the... We've got a little porch area near the church that we're using today to make this video for you guys. So our plans were thwarted, weren't we? We're cut to a howling gale, pouring rain, and we decided, nah, we'll do something else. So what have we got for you today? We're going to take a look at our books.
Books and more books.
So if you've been watching our channel for a while, you'll know that we occasionally pull out an old book, an old pamphlet, and tell you a quirky, interesting little tale from years gone by. Today we're going to take a look at some of those books, let you know what we love about them and where we got them. What have you got there, Andrew?
So I picked this book up recently. I really like this one. This is from 1865. It's called Romancism Drolls of the West of England. It's by Robert Hunt. And it's quite quirky. So there are stories about Cornwall in here. And what I like is some stories about superstitions.
Yeah.
And there's a whole section here about cure for different ailments.
Okay.
So this one's all about cures for warts.
Do tell.
Well, there's loads of them, but I particularly like this one. It says, we're not in Bodmin, by the way, but this is about the Vicar of Bodmin. Right? It says, the Vicar of Bodmin found, not long since, a bottle full of pins laid in a newly made grave.
Right.
I have heard of this as an unfailing remedy. Each wart was touched with a new pin, and the pin then dropped into the bottle. I am not quite certain that it was necessary that the bottle should be placed in a newly made grave. In many cases, burying it in the earth, and especially at a four crossroads, was quite sufficient. As the pins rust, the warts decay.
How extraordinary!
Yeah. So, there we go.
So these days, warts, verrucas, all that,
Yeah.
as they get older, they kind of fall off anyway, don't they?
Well, I'm not an expert on warts, but I'm pretty sure they don't, treat them by
Sticking a pin in them.
sticking a pin in it and burying it in a grave. I'm pretty sure they don't do that anymore. But there is another cure for warts in here. Now, I've heard of this, because I remember my mother telling me this.
Okay.
Right, let me just see if I can find it. It says another remedy was to steal a piece of meat from a butcher's stall in the public market. And with this, to touch the warts and bury it. As the meat putrefied, the warts decayed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, how disgusting.
Yeah. It stink, innit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Can you imagine if you'd been out one morning, you're in a bit of a rush, and you thought, oh, my warts are giving me a bit of problems, I need to go and get some meat. So anyway, I need to go and steal it. I won't go and buy it, I'll go and steal it. So you come home, you rub it on your warts, and you think, oh, it's raining, I'm not going to go out and bury it just now, I'll wait a bit. So you stick it in your fridge. Then say your husband comes home from work, you've nipped out, and he goes, oh, lovely bit of steak in the fridge, I might have that for my tea. How's your rheumatism?
Oh, it's not too bad today.
Fancy a cure for it?
Go on then.
Crawl under a bramble which has formed a second root in the ground.
Oh yeah, that happens in the autumn, doesn't it?
But if you don't want to do that,
Yes.
you could get a woman
Yes.
who has been delivered of a child, feet foremost,
Right.
to tread the patient.
What on earth does that mean? Did they really do that?
How would you even do that? Here, you know when your Johnny was born?
Yeah.
Which way out did he come? Well, he was feet
first.
Well, tell you what, my rheumatism's giving me awful jip. Fancy dancing around on my back a bit.
Good heavens.
And finally from this book, this one's more about Cornwall. When you think about Cornwall, and you think about Cornwall, years ago, you think about mining industry, you think about the fishing industry, which was, major.
Foremost, isn't it?
Yeah, foremost
Yeah.
industry in Cornwall. So this is entitled Whistling. And it says, to whistle by night is one of the most unpardonable sins amongst the fishermen of St. Ives. My correspondent says, I would no more dare go amongst a party of fishermen at night whistling a popular air than into a den of untamed tigers. No miner will allow of whistling underground. I could never learn from the miners whether they regarded it as unlucky or not. I rather think they feel that whistling indicates thoughtlessness, and they know their labour is one of danger requiring serious attention.
Oh, I understand. So both fishing and mining are dangerous jobs, aren't they? And your full attention needs to be on them. So if you're whistling, here boy, put your mind to it, innit?
Isn't it?
Stop that racket, put your mind to it.
Wonder what they would have been whistling.
Church tunes, I suppose.
Yeah, hymns and stuff like that. Yeah.
So that book came from eBay. We knew about it, found a copy of it that was at a price that we could afford, and we managed to buy it. Other times we might turn up at auctions, because as you probably know, book shops, they'll go to the auctions themselves, pick up some lots, split the lot, and then put it on their bookshelf, sell it to you for a little bit higher price. So we thought we might try and cut out the middleman, and we went to the auction ourselves and picked up 1 or 2 lots. Included in one of those lots was this beautiful book. Now, it's called the Cornish Riviera, and it was produced by the Great Western Railway. And what attracted me to this particular lot was this book. There was a couple of others in there too, but I love the paintings, the watercolours, and it's quite unusual that it hasn't been split apart and each one of these put into a frame and mounted on the wall. So we were really, really fascinated and delighted that we got this lot. There was very little competition for it actually, and it was quite a good bargain. But if you look here, the colours are vibrant. Look at this pink and the golden colour that he's used on the cliffside, and the beautiful, stunning blues and purples in the water. I just think they're beautifully done. Makes me want to grab my brushes and try and do it, but I know he's far better painter than I am. So, oh, look at that one. Who wouldn't want that, eh? St Michael's Mount. Stunning. In this book is featured Kynance Cove, and it says it's 1.5 miles to the west of Lizard Village, and they were trying very hard to build a railway that went all the way to the Lizard. They failed, but it's still interesting that they've got beautiful paintings from that area, and they're basically promoting Cornwall. Aren't they gorgeous? So another really good eBay find was this book, An Unsentimental Journey Through Cornwall, and this, absolutely stunning. In the light, it catches the light. If I wobble the book, does it shimmer?
It does.
It does, doesn't it?
It's St Michael's Mount, isn't it?
So you'll notice it says by the author of John Halifax Gentleman.
Okay.
So I'm going to scoot this away a little bit because it's starting to rain again. The reason that the author's name isn't on here, it was printed in 1884, I'll check that, but it's about that time, and it was written by a woman, and of course they weren't published then in their own right, so that's why she's hidden her name. But what I like about this book is it's a story day by day of their encounter in Cornwall, and she actually tells you why she wanted to come to Cornwall, and she said, I had always wished to investigate Cornwall. This desire had existed ever since at 5 years old I had made acquaintance with Jack the Giant Killer, and afterwards at 15 or so fell in love with my life's one hero, King Arthur. And I think for a lot of people, St Michael's Mount and Tintagel will be the 2 reasons that people actually decide to come and visit. So for that reason, I just think her sentiment, her unsentimental journey, it's kind of a misnomer, isn't it, in a way. So she says here, she's describing her train journey down through Cornwall, and she says, our pleasure seemed to amuse an old gentleman who sat in the corner. He at last addressed us with an unctuous West Country accent. There's plenty of those in Cornwall still today. They got chatting, and he was advising her on where to go. And he said to her, well, if you really want a quiet place, I can tell you one almost as quiet as your grave. I ought to know, for I lived there for 16 years. Gerrans is its name. You approach from Falmouth by boat. Then you have to cross country. The distance is such and such a mile, and she can't remember quite what he's saying. But he does advise her this. They'll be sure to ask you double the money, but never you mind. Refuse to pay it, and they'll give in. You must always hold your own against extortion in Cornwall. I say no more. Great book. So there are some exquisite, beautiful plates in here, and they're all here. None of them have been taken from the book and framed and put on a wall.
That one says view of Flushing from the Greenbank Hotel in Falmouth.
Which I think is where they stayed on their first night.
Oh. So this was another one that you picked up when you won some of the lots at the auction, wasn't it?
Yes, it was indeed.
This is called Views of Falmouth. I'm not sure if that's coming out.
Can I just say, it didn't look like that when I bought it. It was really dirty, so all I've done is just a gentle wash with a bit of Q-tips, and it's brought all this gold embossing out. I didn't do anything more than just clean it up, really.
There's no date on this, but I reckon this is late 1800s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And photographic views of Falmouth.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Published by Tregaskis and Sons, 10 Arwenick Street in Falmouth.
Oh, I bet they're long gone.
Yeah, but there's obviously loads of old photos of Falmouth. But one I particularly like, and we were actually there yesterday. This is Pendennis Castle.
Wow.
I took loads of photos of Pendennis Castle yesterday because we were down there just sort of on a recce for a future video that we're going to film.
Did you take that angle?
No, I took every other angle. I didn't do that one. Because we can't often do like the mergy sort of photos showing what it looks like now.
We might be able to take that with us next time.
I do know that that's not changed. That is pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah.
Right, might have changed a little bit because I think there was a little house at the front there which is kind of gone now, but that looks very similar, doesn't it?
Well, when we film the video, we'll take the book with us and we will check it out.
Do you know, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that?
In a recent video about Foy, we referred to Arthur Quiller Couch, who was an author that lived in the town. He was fascinated by Foy. He married a Foy woman and lived there for quite a while. His book reflected, or one of his books, this book, I'm so excited I can't get my words out. This is a brilliant book. It's called Troy Town. And it basically is a farcical, whimsical plot around two new arrivals, a member of the gentry and his wife. At the same time, a forlorn, love-forsaken man arrives called Mr. Fogo, and he's helped by a local lad called Caleb. And in here, Arthur Quiller Couch, or Q, has tried to write in the regional dialect, and it really stumbled me at times that I had to really think, what is he getting at with that word? And I'm Cornish, and it really, really challenged me. So if we have a look at it here. So this is Caleb speaking, and he said, well, not exactly. However's you will, oh, I can't even do it myself, look. Well, not exactly. However, you and me, Sam, have been like Jan Trezaise's geese, never happy unless they be where they bain't, and that's the truth. And it carries on like that for pages and pages and pages, and it's almost like a mental workout that you've got to try and figure out A, what he said, B, what he means, and C, where the story is going. But it's wonderful. Caleb has some fantastic stories. It just makes me think of Jeremy Clarkson and Caleb on that. It just
Clarkson's farm.
Yeah. But the fascinating thing about that particular quote, my great-grand's recipe book has that quote on one of the pages, and we were tickled about it when we read it, weren't we, a couple of years ago.
That's a quote that's been lost through time, isn't it? You don't hear people say that anymore, do you?
Yeah, exactly. So it must have been in common day speak for it to have ended up that Quiller Couch had remembered it and then put it in his book.
So what do you think it means then?
It means that you're never happy with what you've got. So you always want what is in the, you know, that kind of desire to have somebody else's possessions. So you're never happy unless you be where you bain't. Right. So it's where you shouldn't be. It's kind of telling you to be happy with your lot.
So that book's called Troy Town.
It is.
And am I right in thinking that Troy Town was based on Foy?
It was.
Yeah, and the people in the book are people that he would have known and characters from Foy at that time, and what, he's just given them different names, has he? That's
as far as I understand it. So the characters in here are loosely based on actual people that he knew at the time. So there's a mayor, for instance, there's an admiral that's a bit like this and can't really see beyond the end of his nose. And then there's a customs and excise officer that's easily duped and a bit stupid and a bit lax. And that's how the plot really unwinds, and you figure out what's going on with the two new members that they're completely fawning over. And he is mocking the way that this little town is so excited by two new people arriving and making them like the centre of attention. It's very good. It's well worth a read. Actually.
Do you know, I'd love to have been a fly on the wall when some of the people in Foy went and purchased that book, took it home and read it, realised that the character that they're describing was them. And then they carried on reading it and realised, this guy sounds like an idiot.
What is also lovely about the style and the age of this book is that you get a contents page and it describes what happens in each chapter. It's really lovely.
Oh. So when we went to Foy, we went in the museum up there, didn't we?
Yes.
And they had a whole section devoted to Q, didn't they? And they also had a section devoted to Daphne du Maurier.
Yeah, who's always the most famous of the two, isn't she? She always gets a lot more attention, and I guess her books appeal to women more, and they were more easy to read, very easy to read, in fact, compared with this one, I must say. And yeah, so she continues to get the notoriety, and maybe Q has been pushed aside a little.
End of the Q.
Oh, very good. Recently we visited St Michael's Mount, and we used an old pamphlet that was sent over from Canada by Bill Turner. Hello Bill, thank you so much. There was a story from the end of that book that was absolutely superb, but we didn't think it quite fitted with the end of the video, so I think we'll run that now.
Ooh, that looks interesting, Sarah.
We have this book from a Canadian patron. Hi Bill, thank you so much for sending us this. I think it must be a couple of years ago. We've been kind of sat on it, and it's a collection of articles written by an American that visited Cornwall in 1880 as a tourist. When these two arrived in Penzance area, there was a raging storm going on and it wrecked most of the fishing fleet in Marazion. They were determined, however, to get out to the Mount because they wanted to pay a visit, and it says, when we succeeded and we were well out, we noticed that the man at the forward oar was staring at us with curious intentness, and all of the orders proceeded from his mate, who was a much younger man. The latter then explained, "Jack's blind. Aren't you, Jack?" Jack smiled as if some honour had been mentioned. "He ain't afraid to go anywhere with me though, are you, Jack?" A confirmatory nod was given to this interrogation. "Goes out alone sometimes. If I say it's safe, it's all right, innit, Jack? We've been mates these 19 years, and many's the yarn we do have in winter." So this guy was sat in the boat being rowed out to the Mount and suddenly realised that one of the oarsmen is blind. Makes you wonder how they got there, doesn't it? So Bill is a patron. We really, really value everybody that is a supporter of the channel on Patreon or on YouTube membership. That's really what helps us buy these books. In all honesty, the ad revenue that we get every week on our weekly video struggles to cover the cost of the petrol and the parking. So any donations, anything that you can do to help us with the channel, we are so grateful for. So thank you very much.
This is another beautiful book. So this book is 199 years old, and you were successful and you managed to get this one at
It was the
auction as well,
last
wasn't it?
lot. I think everybody else had lost interest
They'd all
by
gone
then.
home.
Yeah.
So it's called Excursions in the County of Cornwall, and it's by an author called F. Stockdale, and he went on a tour of Cornwall, as I said, back 1824 this book was written. And I think back then, to get a book actually written, you had to have it, you had to have patrons to actually be able to get enough copies to be almost like pre-sold, isn't it? But enough patrons would actually want to buy your book, and
else the printer wouldn't take you on, would they?
Yeah.
I think one of the, what was the notable one in there? Was it the Duke of Bedfordshire?
Quite possibly.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
Yeah, but a beautiful book, and it's basically his tour of Cornwall, and as he's gone around, there's lots of little illustrations that he's done on there. That is actually the church in Truro, which is now the cathedral.
Oh, St Mary's Church.
Yeah.
It's been incorporated in the cathedral. And look at this. It's absolutely a beautiful copy because we've got all the tissues in front of all the plates, haven't we? And again, all of the plates are in that book.
Yeah.
We're so lucky.
And we've actually already used this in one of our recent videos. We went to Mevagissey and we filmed a video, like, I think we called it Nostalgic Mevagissey, and we told lots of stories. We were at St Peter's Church in Mevagissey, weren't we?
Yes, I remember.
And there was a story in here about Otwell Hill.
Yeah.
Can we play that clip?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. He went on a tour of the county and he came to Mevagissey, and he says here that the church is a small edifice standing at the north-east entrance of the town, but the tower has not been rebuilt since it fell down a few years since. And it goes on to say that the interior contains a handsome monument with effigies of the deceased erected to the memory of Otwell Hill and his wife, and it says who died in 1614.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
quite a curious thing. So it's inside, so I'm assuming the church is open. So
Looks
should we go in
open.
and have a little look?
Yeah, come on then. are we looking for? Is it that up there by the altar? Yes. Oh my goodness me. Wow. Goodness me. So I can't say that she looks like she's that comfortable. And if she's been lying like that now for over 300 years, goodness me. Oh, look, she's got a little doggy at her feet. The kind of notation above on that beautiful engraving is taken down and written, and it's a little bit easier to read from the book, although it's still quite tricky because it's worded in a poem using language from 400 years ago, not 300 as I said earlier. And anyway, it says, Stock, Lancashire, birth, London, Cornwall gave to Otwell Hill inheritance and grave. Frank, frugal, pleasant, sober, stout and kind, of words true, just indeed, men him did find. 2 reigns he served of justice of the peace, beloved he lived and godly did decease. Mary his wife, to overlive him, something, I can't quite make that out, I think loath. This monument hath raised to them both. So basically he's from Lancashire, born in London, and he came to Cornwall because he got an inheritance. And his character seems to have been very pleasant and reliable. And in God he did die, and he was a justice of the peace for a while. That's how I read that anyway. Isn't that fantastic? He must have been quite a well-respected gentleman to have had such a wonderful, is it an effigy? I can't remember what they're called.
Well, memorial, isn't it?
Memorial.
I'm going to come in because I've got 2 more bits of information which I don't think you know about, which I think are quite interesting. So, I don't know if I'm in shot here. Yeah, I don't normally do this. So, he died by falling off his horse.
Oh, poor man.
Yeah.
Okay.
And his wife remarried within 2 months of his decease.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if that was an episode on CSI, they'd probably look into that today. Wouldn't they?
CSI Mevagissey. So while Sarah's getting ready for the next book, that clip, as I said, that was from the Stockdale book, and we filmed that recently. We went to Mevagissey and we did that nostalgic walk, didn't we?
Yeah.
CSI Mevagissey.
So funny.
If you want to see a story about a monkey as well, if you haven't watched that video already, we'll put a link at the end. But there's a really good story about a monkey spy. You don't get that every day, do you?
What is a monkey spy, Andrew?
It's a monkey spy. It's a true story. Let's watch a video.
Read it in a book.
Read it in a book. Must be true. Are you ready?
Yeah. So as well as books, we like to pick up the old tourist pamphlets, and they give you little gems of information. The other thing that I really love about something like this is that you get loads of adverts in the back, and they can be quite interesting reading because you forget how life used to be so long ago. So look, here we are, look. A family butcher, grocer and draper and hardware all in one shop.
Yeah.
Right? All orders promptly executed. That's it, that's all you've got. And I particularly like this one on the back. He's a family grocer, but his main thing is tea and coffee merchant, and he comes from London. It's like as if it gives him lots of credibility. And he says here, orders collected every Wednesday and Saturday, goods delivered every Thursday and Monday. And it just gives me that open all hours Granville on a bike with a basket on the front of it, going out, you know, pedalling away to deliver all of these orders.
So, he was his Ocado of his day.
Yeah, basically.
So it's almost like he was sort of supplying the holiday makers coming down from London, maybe.
Quite possibly.
And they wanted the things that they liked.
Yeah,
yeah.
He
was sourcing it, yeah.
So there should be some. I haven't actually had a chance to read this since we bought it, but I love the way it says the charm of Padstow, Polzeath, Pentyre, and Port Isaac district. The other thing that I did notice here at the back is a map of the railways to bring you down to Cornwall. Okay, so there's Exeter. It's not linked up. There's a little dotted line. And it doesn't go down to the coast either. It seems to go, it's the one that went over the moorland through Oakhampton. And it branched off to Bude, and it branched off to Launceston, and out to Padstow, and back to Bodmin. Now, none of those railways survived the Beeching cuts.
So this was the London and South Western railway system.
Yeah. So they've all gone.
They have, haven't they?
The only one that you can actually use these days is the Bodminster Padstow as the camel trail on your bike, which is another really interesting reason. It's another really interesting reason in my mind to sit down and just pick up one of these and glance through it.
So these guides are almost a snapshot into social history at that time, isn't it?
Totally. And saying that, that's a really good way to introduce this one. And you know immediately what era that's from, just from the dress, the style of the drawing, and the fonts that's been used, don't you? And I know that when we first had this book from the auction, I think you put that picture, didn't you?
I did.
On Instagram, and people just loved it.
It's
beautifully drawn. She looks so happy, doesn't she? Picking up some surf.
Yeah, surfing in Nike.
And it came with its own bookmark. And the last book I'm holding here, clutching, is Hartnell's Guide to Newquay. So the reason that we picked this one up was that even back then, they were advising tourists on rambles around Newquay. So what would be really lovely is to take this and try and make a video to see if we can still follow the instructions and see if we can successfully get around the walk.
Oh, I think that'd be a great idea. So when's that from? The 1920s, 1930s?
That's the problem with these pamphlets. They don't always have a date on them. Sometimes I know that when you looked at the one from Boscastle, for instance, when we went up earlier this year, or was it Tintagel? No, it was Tintagel, wasn't it? And you had to do it by thinking, well, when the golf club that closed, and they're advertising the golf club, so it has to predate that, and it's saying about the tide times at this particular, and there was elements within the pamphlet that helped us to date it within about a 10-year period.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, these little guides don't always have a date on them, and this must be post-war, because look at the density of the print. There is not an inch of that page that isn't covered, so that would be an indication that we've got to get as much into this pamphlet as possible on each page.
I think it's amazing these things have actually survived over time, because they were obviously designed just for the tourist at that moment in time, and you think, you know, they would have been taken out on a day trip. They're not going to be cared for very well. Just don't drop it.
No, I know.
But they've survived really well, haven't they?
Yeah, and another thing about dating it, for instance, this photograph still shows bathing machines on the beach. So when did they stop? Yeah, it's all these questions. I mean, bathing machines for me is like 1920s, between the wars. So is it just an old photograph that they've come across?
So does this mean we're heading up to Newquay to use these?
Yes. Absolutely. Maybe when Chivy isn't such a pain in the neck. Oh, by the way, if you're planning a trip to Cornwall, allow at least an extra hour. Chiverton Cross, total nightmare.
So I love the fact that someone is going to be sat somewhere like in America or in Australia watching this video, and they think, what the hell is she talking about?
So just a bit of background, they're upgrading the A30 between Cullen Cross and Chiverton Cross. Chiverton Cross is a notorious black spot for accidents, but it's also one of the busiest roundabouts in Cornwall, and they've removed the old Chiverton Cross, and whilst they're doing the roadworks they put a temporary one. Well, it's going to be the permanent one, but it's just a nightmare.
It's a gyratory system.
Oh right, okay. We'll leave it there.
Anyway, basically, if you're coming to Cornwall for your holidays, so you might need to allow a bit more time on the A30.
Yeah, if you've got to get west. Yeah. So yeah, there you go.
Can I just say, Sarah, you've got massive piles of books.
So we've just shown you the books that we use to make our weekly videos, and recently, if you've been watching us for a while, you might have noticed that we've kind of changed some of the format of the videos.
Yeah, so we've been mixing things up a little bit this year, so not every single video we put out is a walk. Sometimes we're looking at a popular spot in Cornwall, and we're maybe looking at it from, if you wanted to visit, best ways to visit, is it worth spending the time to go there in the first place, and maybe trying to tell you some interesting facts, things you might not know about that place already.
TripAdvisor has played quite a big part in that as well. So what we're conscious of is going back to that unsentimental journey book, that people don't want to feel that they're paying beyond and being ripped off for something that they want to enjoy. So we have used TripAdvisor quite a bit. Let us know what you think about that in our videos. Does it help you? Does it make you go, oh, I don't like TripAdvisor? You know, all that feedback. We need some feedback. Let us know if we entertaining you or providing you with some helpful information that makes you have an enjoyable holiday.
Yeah, and at the end of it, it's just the two of us, and we're guessing all the time. Well, what would people like to watch? You know, are we doing the right thing? Do we need to mix it up? Do we need to change it a little bit? And a good example of that, we went down to Lamorna Cove, didn't we?
Yeah.
We went down there, and we went down there with the sole intention of just filming a beautiful walk. I think it was a 5, nearly 6 mile walk around Lamorna Cove. Beautiful walk. If you find yourself down there, you've got to do it. Went down to St Loy. It's quite strenuous, that walk, but it was really, really good, wasn't it? We had a beautiful day for it. Made our video about that, and we'd been put off by some of the horror stories we'd been hearing about the private car park at Lamorna Cove, where that book actually suggested that you started your walk from. We made a separate video about the car parking arrangements at Lamorna Cove, and that actually did really, really well. So in context, that one did about 90,000 views, which for us is a really big video, whereas the actual walk that we did, which we invested most of our time in filming on that day, that generated probably about 6, maybe 7,000 views, which on its own is really, really good. But you know, that's great for a walk video for us. But it just puts it into context. What do people actually want from us on YouTube? Because we don't know, and if you could put it in the comments, it would help form an opinion for us on what we should be producing for you guys.
Yeah, I would just put a caveat on that, that we do have to think about the cost of making a video. So there was one suggestion a couple of weeks ago that made me kind of go, because there was a guy that wanted to know the best pasty in Cornwall. Well, imagine the mileage you'd clock up, imagine the parking fees you'd clock up, and imagine the cost of all the pasties. That's beyond us. We're probably never ever going to recoup the amount of money that we don't lay to make that. So
a great idea. You didn't tell me about that one. I missed that one. I'm up for that.
Well, there you go. It might get made.
But no, on a serious note, we have had people saying to us, why aren't you filming in 4G? 4K.
Can't afford to upgrade everything.
Don't even know what 4K is, to be honest with you. But yeah, you looked into it, but that would mean a new camera, and that's probably two new cameras.
We have a camera each, don't we? And that's what helps us make the videos. But we can't afford to buy 2 new cameras, not even second hand.
And this is what we're using at the moment. This is a Canon G7X, which we've modified with the fluffy
and they're
thing on the
perfect
back.
for us. They're handheld, they're not too heavy.
Flip-top thing.
And not only that, but if you think about a 4K file, we'd have to upgrade our computer. We'd then have to probably upgrade our internet speed. So it all has a knock-on effect. So we can't afford to just come up with a 4K video. And at drones, another thing, isn't it? Taking that out with us. I don't even know where to start with that.
You wouldn't want to let me loose with a drone. I think I would lose it. We'd send it up and it would just disappear. It would be like, you know, out at sea. We'd never ever see it again.
You'd be whistling for it, wouldn't you?
So the only drones you're going to see in our videos is probably us just droning on.
Gone like that, hasn't it? Whistling for it.
Whistling for it?
Yeah.
Why is that the noise it makes?
Not concentrating.
Oh yeah. Oh, I got it now. Yeah, went straight over my head.
It's because you were droning on.
Droning on.
Yeah, all right then. So is that all we've got to say? Yeah, give us some feedback. It's got to be slightly cost effective for us. Any support you can give us, you know, we're really grateful for everybody that can help us out. We know it's a challenging time. We have our own challenges too. So we're with you on that one. And for now, we will say bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, I forgot to do that thing again. If you enjoyed today's video, give us a thumbs up. It does help with the YouTube algorithm, pushes our video out to more people. If you really enjoyed today's video, hit the subscribe button. It does help us out.
It's free on YouTube.
It is free on YouTube.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Cheers.
Bye. And just as we're leaving, I'm going to grab my hood here. Talking about future videos, we are going to be looking at the popular tourist spots of Tintagel, and we will be looking at Rick Stein's Fish and Chips, and we will be looking at Land's End. So one of those is already in the can. We've got the other 2 to film. So check in on our channel for those future videos.